Imagine a world where the mightiest empire in history is shaken to its core, not by a king or a conqueror, but by a man who was once considered nothing more than property. A slave, a gladiator, a name that would echo through the ages, Spartacus. For 2 years, the heart of Rome trembled, haunted by the shadow of an uprising in the rugged mountains of southern Italy. This isn't just a story of rebellion. It's a raw, unfiltered look at a man who dared to challenge the unbreakable machine of Roman power. Forget the polished tales of heroism from the silver screen. The real Spartacus is a far more complex, gritty, and human figure. A symbol of defiance who forced Rome to confront the horrors it had built its empire upon. His legacy became a warning whispered to Roman children for centuries. Beware the slave who dares to rise. If you're fascinated by the untold stories of history, the ones that reveal the raw underbelly of the past, then stick with me. Hit that like button, subscribe for more, and drop a comment to let me know where you're tuning in from. I'm thrilled to share these hidden chapters of history with you, connecting us across time through our shared hunger for truth. Now, let's dive into the world of Spartacus and the rebellion that shook an empire. To truly grasp the weight of Spartacus' story, you need to understand the monstrous system he was up against. We're not just talking about soldiers or battle strategies. We're talking about an entire way of life built on the suffering of millions. In 73 before Common Era, the Roman Republic stood at the height of its power. But beneath the marble statues and grand temples, there was a dark reality most history books gloss over. Rome's wealth, its glory, its very foundation rested on the backs of enslaved people. Millions of them. In Italy alone, 1 out of every 3 people lived in chains. In the city of Rome, the numbers were even more staggering. These weren't just workers or servants. They were treated as tools, as disposable resources. In the silver mines of Spain, slaves toiled until their bodies gave out, choking on poisonous dust. In the sprawling wheat fields of Sicily, they worked under the constant threat of whips and branding irons. And in gladiatorial schools across the land, men were molded into killers, forced to fight to the death for the amusement of cheering crowds. Rome had mastered a chilling art, turning human lives into a never-ending supply of labor. When one slave died, another was bought. When a gladiator fell in the arena, dozens more waited to take his place. It was a system so cold, so normalized, that most Romans never questioned it. It was simply how the world worked. But even the strongest systems have cracks. And in 73 before Common Era, one of those cracks had a name. Let's travel to Capua, a prosperous city about 193 kilometers south of Rome. This place was known for 2 things: its fine wine and its fierce gladiators. Here, in a grim compound that was part prison, part training ground, and part death factory, stood the Ludus of Lentulus Bastiatus, one of the most renowned gladiatorial schools in all of Italy. Don't picture a sports academy or a gym. This was a place of unrelenting brutality, where men were stripped of their humanity and shaped into weapons of spectacle. They slept in dank underground cells, chained like animals at night. They were fed just enough to keep their muscles strong, but never enough to feel truly alive. Their sole purpose, to die in a way that thrilled the masses. And among these broken men was Spartacus. The details of how he ended up here are murky. Ancient records are frustratingly vague. We know he hailed from Thrace, a rugged land north of Greece. Some say he once fought as an auxiliary soldier for Rome before deserting. Others believe he was captured as a prisoner during one of Rome's endless wars in the Balkans and sold into slavery. What we do know for certain is that Spartacus was no ordinary man. He wasn't just a physical threat, though his strength and skill in combat were undeniable, but a thinker. He had a sharp mind for strategy, a knack for leadership, and most dangerously, the ability to ignite hope in others. Life in the ludus was built on fear. Spartacus, the man who owned these gladiators, believed in one rule: crush their spirits until they forget what hope feels like. Most of the men accepted their grim fate. They fought when ordered. They died when their time came. They became exactly what Rome wanted, tragic figures of entertainment. But Spartacus was different. He watched. He studied. He memorized the guards' routines, noted the weakest points in the walls, and quietly sought out the men who still had a spark of defiance in their eyes. He waited for the right moment. Imagine living every day knowing your life is on a countdown. Tomorrow, next week, or next month, you could be marched into the arena. Once you step onto that blood-soaked sand, the rules are brutal but simple. Win, and you delay your death a little longer. Lose, and you die as thousands of Romans roar with delight. Now, imagine enduring this, not for honor or glory, but for the twisted amusement of the very people who stole your freedom. This was the harsh truth of a gladiator's life, a truth often softened in movies. Sure, a few gladiators became famous, and some even earned enough to buy their freedom. But most died young, scared and alone, their blood staining the sand while spectators munched on sweets and wagered on the next fight. In the spring of 73 before Common Era, something changed within the walls of the ludus. Perhaps a punishment was too cruel, or Spartacus pushed the men too far. Or maybe Spartacus had finally gathered enough allies, desperate men willing to risk everything for even a sliver of freedom. History tells us that Spartacus, along with about 78 other gladiators, staged a daring escape. They had no weapons. Such things were forbidden inside the ludus, so they grabbed whatever they could. Kitchen knives, meat cleavers, skewers. Think about that. 78 trained warriors decided they'd rather die fighting for freedom than spend one more day in chains. They knew the stakes. If caught, they faced crucifixion, a slow, torturous death meant to terrify others into submission. Yet, they broke out anyway. The guards were caught off guard, overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the revolt. The gladiators fought their way out of the compound and into the streets of Capua. Amid the chaos, they stumbled upon a wagon loaded with gladiatorial gear. Suddenly, they had real weapons, swords, shields, armor, and then Spartacus made a choice that would alter the course of history. Instead of splitting up and running in all directions to save themselves, he kept them together. They moved as one, heading into the countryside. The slave revolt that would bring Rome to its knees had begun. What happens next is nothing short of astonishing. Within weeks, Spartacus' small band of 78 escaped gladiators swelled to thousands, then tens of thousands. Ancient accounts claim his army eventually grew to 120,000 strong. How did this happen? Because Italy was a ticking time bomb, ready to explode. Remember, 1 in 3 people in Italy lived in bondage. They toiled on farms, in mines, in workshops. They were beaten, scarred, and stripped of hope. They had seen loved ones sold off like livestock. They lived without rights, without dignity. And now, word spread like wildfire through the slave quarters and labor camps. There was an army of escaped slaves, led by a man named Spartacus, who had not only broken free, but had beaten trained Roman soldiers. His camp became a beacon. Farm workers fled their masters' estates. Miners abandoned the dark tunnels. Even household servants slipped away under cover of night. Not all were fighters. Most had never touched a weapon. But they were willing to learn because the alternative, returning to chains, was unthinkable. Spartacus established a base on Mount Vesuvius. Yes, the same Vesuvius that would later erupt and bury Pompeii, though that disaster was still 150 years away. The mountain offered a strong defensive position, hard to attack. Rome responded by sending a force of 3,000 men under a praetor named Gaius Claudius Glaber. This was supposed to be a quick cleanup job: round up some runaway slaves, crucify them along the Via Appia as a warning, and move on. Glaber set up camp at the base of the mountain, blocking the only clear path down. He thought he had Spartacus cornered. All he needed to do was wait for the rebels to starve. But Spartacus wasn't just a brute, he was a strategist. Under cover of darkness, his men crafted ropes from wild vines, rappelled down a supposedly unclimbable side of the mountain, and launched a surprise attack on Glaber's camp from behind. The Romans were completely unprepared. It was a bloodbath. Glaber's forces scattered in panic, and Spartacus' army claimed their weapons, supplies, and armor. When news of this defeat reached the Senate in Rome, it sent shockwaves through the city. This wasn't supposed to happen. Slaves didn't defeat Roman soldiers. The entire social order hinged on this unshakable truth. Yet Spartacus had just shattered it. What followed was a stunning display of guerrilla warfare. Spartacus didn't just win fights. He systematically outmaneuvered every Roman attempt to crush him. Rome sent more forces, one after another. Each time, the commanders underestimated their foe, assuming they were dealing with a disorganized mob. Each time, they were proven wrong. Spartacus' army swept through southern Italy like a wildfire. They weren't just attacking, they were liberating. Every estate they overran freed more slaves. Every victory brought more weapons and resources. Rome had unknowingly created a vicious cycle. Every effort to stop Spartacus only made him stronger. What makes this rebellion truly groundbreaking is that Spartacus wasn't just building an army, he was forging a community. His camp operated on ideas that flew in the face of Roman values. Ancient sources tell us he shared the spoils of battle equally among his followers. In a society obsessed with rank and privilege, where your worth was determined by birth or conquest, Spartacus created a space of radical fairness. He was also clever with captives. When his forces took Roman soldiers prisoner, they didn't kill them. Instead, they forced them to fight as gladiators for the amusement of the rebels, a cruel reversal of Rome's own blood sport. It was a psychological blow, making Rome witness its own people suffer the humiliation they had inflicted on so many others. The Senate finally woke up to the gravity of the situation. This wasn't just a slave uprising. It was a full-blown war. They appointed both consuls, the Republic's highest officials, to tackle the threat. Two elite consular armies marched south to end the rebellion. For a moment, it seemed Spartacus might actually triumph. His forces defeated these armies in a string of battles. Panic gripped Roman Italy. Trade routes faltered. Wealthy landowners abandoned their estates, fleeing to fortified cities. Rome hadn't felt such fear since Hannibal crossed the Alps 130 years before. But here's where the story takes a complicated turn. Spartacus faced an impossible question: what next? He had won battle after battle, humiliated Rome, and freed tens of thousands. Yet he couldn't truly defeat the Roman Republic. He lacked the resources, the infrastructure, and the strategic ground to topple an empire with endless manpower and wealth, not to mention an iron will to crush any rebellion. According to the ancient historian Plutarch, Spartacus had a straightforward plan: march north, cross the Alps, and disperse. His followers could return to their homelands, Gaul, Germania, Thrace, and live as free men. But his army didn't want to leave. Why would they? In Italy, they were a force to be reckoned with, feared and powerful. They had tasted victory, equality, and camaraderie. Returning to their scattered villages meant becoming vulnerable again. Here, united, they were unstoppable. This is the tragic core of Spartacus' story. He had built something extraordinary, an army of former slaves who matched the might of Roman legions. But that very success became a trap. His followers craved more raids, more fights, more of this life of freedom and strength. Spartacus tried to lead them north. Some accounts say he reached the Po River Valley in northern Italy. But his army, now bloated with recruits who had no intention of leaving, refused to cross the Alps. Some of his lieutenants, like Crixus, a Gallic gladiator, argued to stay and fight. The group splintered. Crixus broke off with about 30,000 followers, only to be swiftly caught and killed by Roman forces, his faction destroyed. It was a devastating loss, a stark warning of what lay ahead. Spartacus made a desperate pivot. If he couldn't escape via the Alps, he'd try another path. He led his army south to the tip of Italy, aiming for Sicily, a place where a massive slave revolt had erupted just decades earlier, where agricultural slaves might rise to join him. He struck a deal with Cilician pirates to ferry his army across the strait, but when the moment came, the pirates took his payment, rumored to be a hefty sum, and vanished. Some historians think Rome bribed them. Others believe the pirates simply took the easy money and fled. Either way, Spartacus was stranded, his army cornered in southern Italy with Rome's full might closing in. Rome had learned its lesson by now. No more half measures or underestimating the enemy. The Senate turned to Marcus Licinius Crassus, one of Rome's wealthiest men and a battle-hardened general who had fought under Sulla in the civil wars. Crassus was a ruthless figure, known for his predatory business tactics. He amassed a fortune, estimated at over $170 million in today's terms. Owners sold him their burning properties at a steep discount. Ambitious and merciless, he was determined to crush Spartacus. Crassus took command of 8 legions, roughly 40,000 men, and enforced brutal discipline. When one legion fled from Spartacus' forces, Crassus revived an ancient punishment called decimation. Every 10th man was randomly chosen and beaten to death by his comrades. The message was clear: fear me more than the enemy. Instead of chasing Spartacus across the countryside, Crassus devised a cunning strategy. He constructed a massive wall, stretching 59 kilometers across the narrowest part of Italy's boot, complete with trenches, palisades, and watchtowers. It was an engineering feat meant to trap Spartacus' army and starve them out. For weeks it worked. Spartacus' forces were pinned, their supplies running low. But Spartacus wasn't done. On a snowy winter night, his men filled a section of the trench with dirt and debris, then charged across before the Romans could respond. It was a desperate move, and not everyone made it. Thousands were cut down, but a large portion of the army broke through. They were loose in Italy once more, though weakened, fractured, and running out of options. Crassus, relentless, pursued them. In the spring of 71 before Common Era, Spartacus made his final stand in the region of Lucania, southern Italy. The exact spot is lost to time, but ancient accounts paint a vivid picture. Spartacus knew this was the end. There was no escape. Crassus had him cornered, and reinforcements under Pompey the Great, returning from Spain, and Lucullus, sailing from Macedonia, were closing in. If Spartacus didn't win decisively now, he'd be crushed between multiple Roman armies. Plutarch recounts a haunting moment before the battle. Spartacus was brought his horse, but he drew his sword and killed it, declaring that if he won, he'd have, if he won, plenty of Roman horses to choose from. If he lost, he wouldn't need one. It was raw, defiant courage, a man facing death on his own terms. The battle was catastrophic. Spartacus fought at the forefront, desperately trying to reach Crassus himself. If he could kill the Roman commander, there might be a chance to break through. He battled with ferocity, taking down 2 centurions in single combat. But the harsh reality of war was unforgiving. Crassus had fresh troops, superior numbers, and better gear. Spartacus' army, exhausted and starving, was worn down by sheer force. Spartacus fell in the fight, though his body was never found, perhaps buried among the countless dead littering the battlefield. Some speculate the Romans destroyed his remains, fearing his grave could become a rallying point. 6,000 of his followers were captured and crucified along the Appian Way, the main road from Rome to Capua. For 193 kilometers, travelers passed rows of crucified slaves, their bodies left to decay as a grim warning. This is the price of defying Rome. Another 5,000 fled north, only to be annihilated by Pompey's returning legions. Pompey, who barely fought in the campaign, claimed credit for ending the revolt, much to Crassus' rage. The Third Servile War was over. Spartacus was gone. The largest slave uprising in Roman history had been crushed. Rome emerged victorious, or so it seemed. But here's the thing. Spartacus' story didn't end with his death. In many ways, it was just the beginning. Rome tried to erase the rebellion from memory. Official records downplayed the event. The Senate denied Crassus a full triumph, the highest military honor, deeming a victory over slaves unworthy of such glory. They wanted the world to forget, but you can't erase the image of thousands of crucified bodies lining a major road. You can't wipe away the fear that gripped Italy for 2 years. The revolt left deep wounds, emotional, economic, and social, that Rome would bear for generations. More than that, something unexpected happened. Spartacus became a legend. Even in ancient times, his name became a symbol of resistance. Later uprisings whispered his name as a call to action, and over 2,000 years later, his legacy grew even larger. Spartacus evolved from a historical figure into a universal emblem of the fight against oppression. During the French Revolution, rebels drew inspiration from him. In the 19th century, abolitionists used his story to combat slavery. In the 20th century, communist movements embraced him as an icon. Germany's Spartacus League, led by Rosa Luxemburg and Karl Liebknecht, took his name. His rebellion inspired art and storytelling, from Howard Faston novel, banned during the McCarthy era in the United States, to Stanley Kubrick's iconic film, a defiance of the Hollywood blacklist with Kirk Douglas and screenwriter Dalton Trumbo at the helm. What Rome dreaded came true. Spartacus became more powerful in death than he ever was in life. So, what's the real story of Spartacus? Ancient texts and modern research suggest he wasn't aiming to topple the Roman Republic or end slavery as a system. His goal was simpler: escape. He wanted to lead his people out of Italy, back to their homelands. The massive rebellion, the battles, the army of tens of thousands, it was, in a way, an unintended consequence of Rome's refusal to let enslaved people simply walk away. Rome's reaction to the revolt reveals much. They didn't reform the slave system or introduce protections. They didn't rethink the brutal conditions of gladiatorial schools. Instead, they doubled down on fear, sending a clear message: resistance will be met with annihilation. Yet there's a bitter irony here. Rome's rigid refusal to see enslaved people as human, to grant them even basic dignity, sowed the seeds of its own downfall. The empire's economy relied on slave labor, requiring constant wars to capture more people. When expansion slowed, the system began to crumble. Spartacus exposed a fatal flaw in Roman society. You can't build lasting strength on suffering. You can't ensure stability through sheer control. Sooner or later, the oppressed will rise. Not today, not tomorrow, but eventually. Rome learned this lesson far too late. By the time the empire fell, it had been eroded by centuries of inequality, corruption, and the moral rot of a system that treated humans as objects. Spartacus' rebellion was a warning, a crack in the foundation, a reminder that no empire, no matter how mighty, is invincible when built on broken lives.